Hey, good evening, ladies and gentle drunks. My name is Kevin Olson. I'm a recovered alcoholic. Welcome, all of you, to the Fourth Dimension Big Book Study, that is. Fourth Dimension Big Book Study. Glad to have you all here. And let's kick off, as we always do, with the set-aside prayer, which goes a little something like this. Oh, I just had it open and it just shifted around on me. There we go. God, please help me to set aside everything I think I know about you, about me, about my fellow man, about the 12 steps. And please allow me to gain a fresh new vision, perspective, and understanding of what you, what me, what my fellow man, and the 12 steps are all about. Brilliant. Okay, and as this is the Fourth Dimension Big Book Study, I always like to read the two parts of the Big Book that refer to the Fourth Dimension. In case anyone is curious, what is the Fourth Dimension? I get that question a lot. So on page 8, Bill Wilson writes, I was soon to be catapulted into what I like to call the fourth dimension of existence. I was to know happiness, peace, and usefulness in a way of life that is incredibly more wonderful as time passes. And on page 25, Bill Wilson writes that we have found much of heaven and we have been rocketed into a fourth dimension of existence of which we had not even dreamed. We have been catapulted. We are going to be rocketed. Let's do it, guys. Let's get together. Let's have this happen tonight. And for all who would, for the sake of tradition, for the sake of custom, everyone put one hand up like this. Everyone put another hand up like this. And everyone go, oh, yeah. I never get tired of that. Never get tired of it. Man, have I been missing you guys. I am so glad to be here. I am sorry I've been away. And usually, even when I'm away, I'm still able to log in. And I don't know what to say other than God had other plans. You know, usually when I'm in Houston or traveling in the Middle East or whatever, I can usually get on. But yeah, these last two Tuesday nights, I just haven't been here. However, word has it that my sponsee, Derek, did a pretty phenomenal job of We Agnostics. Yeah. And because I'm a sensitive alcoholic, immediately I thought, well, what? Nobody wants me back? Everyone loves Derek now? Literally, like I wish I was kidding about that, but I felt that way for a moment. I'm selfish and self-centered. I don't feel happy for him. I feel sorry for myself. You know, that's how it is. Anyway, I'm very, very grateful. I'm very glad that, and Derek was lit. He's like, this is your secret weapon. This is your turbocharge. This is what you do. Because he just felt so lit up after spending time with you guys and going through the big book, particularly the chapter We Agnostics. Man, I used to hate that chapter, you know, and it was simply because I didn't understand it. Okay. And when I don't understand something, I automatically default to hating it. I don't know about you guys, but that's how I am. Okay. If I don't understand something, I just hate it and want it to go away. Okay. And I get frustrated and I feel stupid and I feel less than, and I don't understand what Professor Langley's flying machine being at the bottom of the Potomac River. I didn't understand any of that stuff, man. Okay. And it wasn't until some very good people sat down and did exactly what I, aspire to do for the folks on this call and anyone that ever comes to our study, man. What I aspire to do is simply share with others what I have been given. And I had some very good people, some very patient people sit down and take me through this book, line by line, word by word, and make sure that I understood every little piece of it, you know. And I think that time, we give each other our time, you know. It's the most valuable commodity that we have. It's the one thing we can't get any more of. And we can't make up more of it. Okay. And we give each other our time in Alcoholics Anonymous. And that, you know, that's a pretty powerful thing. You know, Brad and my friend Scott Lee says, we can fake caring about one another. We can fake that, but we can't fake showing up for one another. You can't fake showing up. And I had some really good people show up for me and take me through this book and teach this book to me. And you know, what an incredible joy for me, though. I mean, you think about it, like Derek, the sponsee of mine that ran the study, because of the grace of God and the power of God that he has accessed through the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. I mean, 2 years ago, he was one of the most broken alcoholics I've ever met. And I've met a few broken alcoholics. That's 2 years. 2 years now he's facilitating this study. What an incredible, incredible turn of events. And, you know, to see a fellowship grow about you, to have a host of friends, this is an experience you must not miss. We know you will not want to miss it. Frequent contact with newcomers and with each other is the bright spot of our lives. And anyway, guys, I'm very, very pleased, obviously, to be here with you again here tonight. I've missed you very much. Okay, so Brad, you've been, have you been, no, you've been away as well, Brad, or I would have asked you to facilitate.
Yeah,
Do you think
the last 2 weeks.
is there anything, guys, for anyone who was here or was here with Derek or whatnot, is there anything you want me to review in terms of the chapter We Agnostics? Anything that we want to review in terms of step 2? Okay. And so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say, here's the quick crash course in step 2. Okay. When I take my sponsees through step 2 using this book, I'm going to just very quickly show you guys the first step 2 proposition. The first step 2 question is on page 47. The chapter We Agnostics simply says, do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe there is a power greater than myself? That's it. Notice it doesn't even say God. That's it. That's the first question. Do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe there is a power greater than myself? That's it. That's the first question. It says we needed to ask ourselves but one short question. And then, beautiful promise. It says, as soon as a man says he does believe or is even willing to believe, we emphatically assure him he's on his way. So I have a sponsee, and guys, I'll say 98% of the time when one of my sponsees says, when I ask that question, do you now believe, or are you even willing to believe? You know, I've got sponsees on this call right now, and they know we've sat and we've talked about that question. 98% of the time, the answer is yes. Okay. And when they say yes, I emphatically assure them they are on their way. It has been repeatedly proven among us that upon this simple cornerstone, a wonderfully effective spiritual structure can be built. Okay. And all my sponsees know I talk all the time about what is that wonderfully effective spiritual structure. I like to think of it as like a cathedral inside of myself. I can build a beautiful cathedral where I can go and be at perfect peace and ease, in the Bible, Jesus calls it the secret place. Okay. But the other thing it can be, and we're non-denominational, so it doesn't have to be a cathedral. It could be, oh man, I should show you. Let me show you something. Let me see if I can pull it up on my phone. Some of you guys know I've been traveling in the Middle East recently. And that was, just an incredible experience. Obviously, there's a photo I'm looking for here in particular. Give me one moment. I don't know if you guys can see this. A smarter man than me would have this available to share on the, I don't know if you can see it. No, you probably can't because oh wait, can you see it there? Can you see it a little bit? Can you see it there? Anyway, it's called the Grand Mosque. That's the Grand Mosque in Oman, if you can see it. That's a wonderfully effective spiritual structure. Okay. And then some of my indigenous friends remind me, hey, Kevin, hello. Okay. It could be a teepee. It could be a sweat lodge too. Whatever it is, it's a wonderfully effective spiritual structure. Where are we building it? Where am I building it? I'm building it inside myself, that I can go a place, no matter the chaos and the turmoil and the certain trials and low spots of life, the bumpy road of life that we all experience in life as human beings. It's a place that I can go inside and be well and be okay. Okay. A wonderfully effective spiritual structure can be built within ourselves. Okay. And I just want to tie this on page 47. I don't know if Derek did this. On page 47, I like to tie it to Bill Wilson's experience on page 12. Okay. So page 47, it says, do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe? If you flip to page 12 quick, Okay. Bill Wilson says here, this is where Bill Wilson takes step 2, the squiggly writing, 1, 2, 3, 4 lines down. It was only a matter of being willing to believe in a power greater than myself. Notice again, he doesn't even say God, just a power. And he only had to be willing to believe. Nothing more was required of me to make my beginning. That's it. Okay. This is it's pretty easy step 2. Okay. Do I believe or do I not believe? Okay. So now let's go to page 53. This is the second step 2 proposition. Okay. And I assume that Derek pointed out, guys, by the way, the chapter We Agnostics. Okay, this whole chapter, if you like, at the top of page 44, at the top where it says chapter 4, We Agnostics, you can just write step 2 right there. Okay, because sometimes it's not obvious. They didn't name the chapter step 2. Okay, but that's what this chapter is about. This chapter is step 2, page 44, We Agnostics. Okay, so on page 53, it says, when we became alcoholics, crushed by a self-imposed crisis we could not postpone or evade. Guys, is it safe to say that I was in a self-imposed crisis? I was being crushed by a self-imposed crisis I could not postpone or evade. Yes. If I could have postponed it, I would have. If I could have evaded it, I would have. But I couldn't. I was pinned against the wall, man. Okay? Alcohol, driven to AA under the lash of alcoholism, beaten into a state of reasonableness. I had to fearlessly face the proposition that God is either everything or else he is nothing. God either is or he isn't. What was our choice to be? Well, look, I'm a self-proclaimed intellectual. Self-proclaimed. No one else proclaims that. It's self-proclaimed, okay? But I studied all this stuff in university. Religious philosophy, all this stuff, man. And that type of stuff, is God everything or else he's nothing? I mean, that's a pretty, heady kind of question, man. I'm likely to go eat a bunch of psychedelics and go like trip out on whether God is everything or else he is nothing. You know what I mean? Okay. So I need to keep this very simple for myself. Okay. I need to keep it very simple. And this is how I do that. The first question I ask, am I willing to believe? The answer is yes. The second question, this is how I reconcile that God is either everything or else he is nothing. What's my choice to be? That, do I believe the power that I say I believe in question 1? Do I believe that that power is more powerful than my alcoholism? Or do I think that my alcoholism is more powerful than that power? And of course, the majority of the time, 98% of the time, my sponsees will say, no, I believe that the power is bigger than my alcoholism. Okay. And I'm done step 2. I'm done step 2 because all I need in order to finish, to do step 2, number 1, I have to believe there's a power. And number 2, I have to believe that that power is bigger than my problem. That's it. Okay. Whatever that power is, I'm going to pick a big one. Okay. We get to pick our own, man. Pick the biggest power that I can. Okay. I don't tell God how big my problems are. I tell my problems how big my God is. Okay. God is enough, man. Okay. I work with a guy. He's not one of us. He's just a spiritual guy. He wears a thing all day long. It's just it's like one of those Lance Armstrong bracelets, but it just says God is big enough. I thought, my goodness, I love that. God is big enough, guys. Okay. God is big enough. Sandy Beach. You guys ever heard of Sandy Beach? Like, I don't mean a Sandy Beach. I mean the speaker, Sandy Beach. He says, your father is a king. Your father is a king. You have nothing to fear. Okay. Pick a big God. Okay. And that's it. As soon as the sponsee says, I believe that this power is bigger than my problem. That's it. We're done step 2 and we're moving on to step 3. Okay. That's brilliant. So we're going to move into step 3 now. We're going to move into the chapter, how it works. But first, I want to address the question that I get a lot, which is, well, what about the other 2% of the time, Kevin, that your sponsees say, no, they don't believe, or they're not willing to believe, or they're unsure. Okay. Because that's what agnostic means. I'm sure Derek talked about this maybe a couple of weeks ago. The word agnostic just means without knowledge. It comes from Greek, ag, meaning without, and gnosis meaning knowledge. Without knowledge. We are just people without knowledge of God. Okay. which incidentally is why we get people who are sometimes members of the clergy or ordained spiritual people or Catholic priests coming into AA. They believe in God intellectually, but they don't have a relationship with God. They don't know God. They haven't accessed God because, well, because of pomp, calamity, and worship of other things. Deep down in every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. It may be obscured by calamity, by pomp, and by worship of other things. And when I can clear away the pomp, the calamity, the worship of other things, what Bill Wilson calls the worldly clamors, when I can clear those away, there's room for God, and I can start to know God myself, okay? So what do we do with sponsees, though, that say, like, no, I don't know, and I'm not sure, and I'm hesitant, and whatever, and I don't know if I can believe. All I will simply ask them is, do you believe that I believe? Can you believe in that? Can you believe that I believe? And if they can believe that I believe, we can start from there. That's it. If they believe that I believe, and in particular, they believe that I did not believe when I first came to AA. Okay, I did not come to AA with God. I did not. I accessed God through the power of AA, through the power of the 12 steps. Guys, it's okay to come to AA and be afraid of God. Anybody here, when anyone here, I know we got a couple old timers here. Anyone here angry at God when they got to AA? It's okay to be angry at God. Yeah, James, you angry at God? It's okay to be angry at God. That's great. As long as we believe that there is a God to be angry in. Okay, that's fine. We got steps to help you with all of that. Okay, we can work through that. Yeah, I remember I heard the speaker say one time, he said to a sponsee, do you believe in God? And he said, if I ever met God in a dark alley, I'd take my switchblade and cut him. Right? And he said, how wonderful. He believes that there's a God. How wonderful. We can start from there. Even if I want to shank him, okay, I still believe in that God. So when I have a sponsee that doesn't believe, I will ask him, can you believe that I believe? Can you believe in that? Can we start there? Okay. And little by little, I mean, how did I come to believe, man? I came to believe because I came to believe in you. Okay. And really, the first thing that I had to come to believe in is the hopelessness of my situation. That's the first thing I had to come to believe in. And once I came to believe in the hopelessness of my situation, I came to believe that what you guys were saying was true. Because I would go to those meetings and you would say, I thought like you thought, and I drank like you drank, and I felt like you felt, but I don't live that way anymore. And we found a way out of that. And I came to believe you. And you told me that you did these 12 things. And I came to believe that that was real. And I'd listen to these speaker tapes from all these great speakers from around the world, and I'd believe them. And I'd go to meetings in Calgary, and I'd see the light come on in people's eyes, guys who were doing the deal. And I'd come to believe in that. And little by little, it came to grow. Okay. And little by little, I came to believe in my sponsor, and I came to believe in the treatment center I was in, and I came to believe in this book, and I came to believe in doing these 12 steps. And then ultimately today I can say without question, without equivocation, I have a deep, powerful, meaningful, sustaining, beautiful relationship with God of my own understanding today. And that's a heck of a gift, let me tell you. Okay, so that's a little bit, just a review on step 2. Let's go to how it works. Now, what we're gonna do, guys, we're gonna kick off into this chapter. We're gonna do our best to get through step 3 tonight. It's really just a couple pages, but we're gonna read how it works. Brad is gonna read it for us. My man, Brad, great to have you back. It's good. The dynamic duo, all is right in the universe. Kevin and Brad are back at the 4th Dimension Big Book Study. This is great. We're gonna read through how it works, and here's the problem: is like a lot of times we read how it works, and it's just like, do you guys know like Charlie Brown? You know who Charlie Brown is? You know Peanuts. You know what I mean by Peanuts? You know, remember the teachers, the voice, like wah 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 wah. That's what how it works becomes like for us, right? How it works is just like this distraction that we have before the meeting starts, but we don't really pay attention to the language anymore because it's just we read it all the time. But there's actually some really important stuff in here And there's some stuff that I'm going to interrupt Brad a couple times. At my home group, the primary purpose group in Calgary, we read the original manuscript of How It Works. Sometimes we read that here tonight. Brad, what's your feeling? Do you want to read the original manuscript, or do you just want to read the original, the regular out of the book?
Well, I like reading the original manuscript because all the meetings I go to, that's the one we read. So this
All
one's the one
right.
that's foreign to me. But
Okay. Well,
I don't have it
let's
right.
read the OG. Let's read the
I don't have it
original
right in
manuscript.
front of me though. Probably
Well,
get it.
I imagine you could Google it pretty quickly. It's on the PPG website. I'll tell you
Okay.
what, you Google it, and I'll just quickly talk about
Okay.
what happened with the original manuscript. So the story about how the 12 steps were written, I have heard. Now, guys, look, I was not there. Okay. I don't know exactly that this is how it happened, but the story is it was like a dark and rainy night in New York City, and Bill Wilson was sick. He had the flu, and he'd been writing this book. I mean, that's what he was doing. He was devoting his time to writing this book. And at this point, what he had to do was he would write, and then he would have to get everything edited by the first 100 members of AA. Like, can you imagine? You take 100 drunks, we can't agree on what flavor of coffee to buy, okay? Let alone the original manuscript for our basic textbook. But this is how Bill Wilson was living. Like, he must have been on a spiritual beam to be able to deal with that kind of an annoyance. But that's what he was doing. He was writing this book, and he was getting it reviewed and reviewed and reviewed. Going to Oxford group meetings, working with lots of other drunks, getting spiritual counsel from Ed Dowling and Father Ed Dowling and Father Sam Schumacher, and consulting with Dr. Bob about the book and so on. And he was sick one night, and he grabbed a pad of legal paper, like a big ream of yellow paper, and he went up to his room. In fact, Rob, online, there's actually pictures of the first original manuscript. Yeah, there you go. Of course. My man. Okay, you can see what it looks like there. You can click on that link. And Bill Wilson said he went and the pen just started to move on its own. He said some prayers, he said some meditation, and the pen just started to move on its own. And when he was finished, he had written this. He wrote this. This is what he wrote. Okay. But what he actually wrote is what Brad is about to read. Okay. He actually wrote what Brad is about to read. And then God expressed himself through the group conscience of the first 100 members and said, that's a little harsh. Okay. We need to pare it back a little bit. But at my home group, we like it harsh. Okay. We want it to be harsh, man, because you know what else is harsh? Alcoholism is harsh. Okay. Drug addiction is harsh. Okay. So this is what we're up against, man. This is what we're up against. Hey, Marianne, nice to see you. I haven't seen you for a little while. Hello. Yeah, great. And Deb, I mean, okay, so everyone else that I didn't say hi to is going to get hurt feelings now, but it's wonderful. Hello, everyone. Lovely to see you all. But Marianne just surprised me. I haven't seen her for a while. It's great to see you. Okay, so what Brad just is about to read is what we call the original manuscript of How It Works. It was softened. And here's one of the other things. I'm going to get this out of the way right now. And I'm sure Rob will back me up on this. There is a myth around Alcoholics Anonymous. There is this cutesy little chicken soup for the alcoholic soul myth that Bill Wilson, if he could ever change one thing in the big book, he would change the word rarely to never have we seen a person fail. Okay? Not true. Not true at all. Okay? False. Completely false. Bill Wilson was asked about that in a Grapevine article. I think it was in around 1972. Grapevine article. Bill Wilson confirmed, no, he absolutely meant to put the term rarely in there. Okay? Rob, you don't have the article? Come on, Rob. Come on.
I do have the article, but
Come on, Rob.
don't forget
Get
Bill
your
was
act
dead in
together.
1972.
It was 1972?
No, because Bill was dead by then.
No, the article, though, was printed in 1972.
It was earlier than that. I've got it. I'll put it up in the chat.
Of course.
I could see Bill Wilson in 1972, like on the disco, like in the disco ball, like, staying alive. Anyway, Sorry about that. No, Bill said he never intended to write the word never. He meant to write the word rarely because he knows alcoholics are so disagreeable, and we're so confrontational, and we're so defiant that if somebody said never, some drunk would go out and try to prove him wrong. So he put a little buffer in there and put the word rarely. So with that in mind, guys, we're going to hand it over to Brad to read the original manuscript of how it works. Follow along in your books, and you'll see some of the nuances and some of the differences. And I'm gonna weigh in a couple times as we go.
Thanks, Kevin. Hey, everybody. I'm Brad. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Brad.
It's good to be back. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our directions. Those who do not recover are people who cannot and will not completely give themselves to this simple program. Usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. There are such unfortunates. They are not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. They are naturally incapable of grasping and developing a man's rigorous honesty. Their chances are less than average. There are those too who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest.
Okay, so one of the first things I want to say right here, guys, if you sponsor people for any prolonged period of time, it is inevitable that you are going to have people relapse. And it's inevitable you're going to have people relapse and come back to you after relapse. And they're going to say the same thing that I said. They're going to come back to you sniveling, saying, do you think I might be constitutionally incapable of being honest with myself? And you know what I say? Yeah, you probably are. You are probably constitutionally incapable of being honest with yourself. But I have good news. God is more powerful than your constitution. Okay? God is more powerful. And if you will just do this work, we will get you connected to a power that is more powerful than your dishonesty. It's more powerful than your constitution, and you will be lifted up. Okay? It says we are naturally incapable. Yeah, maybe I am naturally incapable. That's okay, because AA is concerned with the supernatural. Okay? I'm not relying on my natural constitution. I am tapped into a new power. Okay? And I also say to them, if you're asking that question, I think that there's hope. If you're asking that question, there's a seed of honesty within you. Okay? But on your own, on my own, lies fall out of my mouth every time I open it. On my own. That's who I am. I lie for fun. I lie to keep things entertaining. I lie because the party's boring. Okay? Like I do. That's just how I am, man. I don't know why, I was constitutionally incapable. I was. And thank God this program and my power greater than myself are more powerful than my constitution. Okay? Grave emotional and mental disorders. Yes, all the time. All the time. All the time. Okay? And it's a delicate balance. I don't think, when in sponsorship, it's a delicate balance, because there's a lot of people that have mental illness that come to AA. And there are those who believe that the 12 steps are the answer for every problem of mental emotional condition. There are people who believe that. I am not one of them. Okay? I think that there are things that overlap. So if you think about something like depression, for example, okay? Now, none of this is AA. I'm going to share this with you. This is just my opinion, okay? If your sponsor tells you something different than what I'm about to say, then your sponsor is right, okay? Agreed on that? Okay? But I think that depression, there are times where depression can be a symptom of the disease of alcoholism. You guys agree with that? For sure. On the other hand, however, depression can also become something different. It can also become its complete own separate organic brain disorder. And at that point, it needs to be addressed medically. Okay? Something like anxiety. Can anxiety be a symptom of the disease of alcoholism? Yes, of course. But it can also become something else that will require some outside help. And if you go read page 133 in our book, in fact, guys, let's skip there and make a little note there. Grave emotional and mental disorders, to go skip to page 133. Let's talk about this for just a minute. Page 133, it says, but this does not mean that we disregard human health measures. God has abundantly supplied this world with fine doctors, psychologists, and practitioners of various kinds. Do not hesitate to take your health problems to such persons. Most of them give freely of themselves that their fellows may enjoy sound minds and bodies. Try to remember that though God has wrought miracles among us, we should never belittle a good doctor or psychiatrist. Their services are often indispensable in treating a newcomer and following his case afterward. Beautiful, okay? So anytime I get one of those hardliners who's like, the 12 steps is the answer for every problem that a person's ever going to have, I like to help them see that part of the book on page 133. But I also want to point out what has happened between where we are now and page 133. I'll give you a hint. There's 12 of them. Okay? We do the steps first. That's my suggestion with my sponsees. Let's try the steps first and see what's left over. Okay? You guys with me on that? Let's see, let's find out that depression, that before we go start taking little pink pills 5 times a day, doctor prescribed, let's maybe try the steps first and then see what's left. You guys with me on that? And you know what? You don't have to be. I'm not going to ask you to be with me on that. I'm going to tell you that that's my own personal experience as a guy who has spent many nights in mental institutions. Okay, that in sobriety, okay. And I will tell you, I went and visited a friend, a good member of Primary Purpose Group, a dedicated member of PPG who was in the psych ward recently. Okay, and sometimes these things happen. This is not Well People Anonymous. Okay, okay. We are people, and this is, you know, there is it's safe to say in any given room of AA, there are going to be people with grave emotional and mental disorders, but we do recover if we have the capacity to be honest. Okay, back to you, Brad. The OG manuscript.
Our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we're like now. If you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to follow directions. At some of these you may balk. You may think you can find an easier, softer way. We doubt if you can. With all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go absolutely. Remember that you're dealing with alcohol, cunning, baffling, powerful. Without help, it is too much for you. But there is one who has all power. That one is God. You must find him now. Half measures will avail you nothing. You stand at the turning point. Throw yourself under his protection and care with complete abandon.
Okay, I just want to talk about, it says that some of these we balked. What does that mean? Well, balking means to start and then stop something. Okay, at some of these we started and then we resisted. If you guys know what a balk is in baseball, okay, a balk is when the pitcher starts to throw. He looks like he's going to start to throw and then stops to deceive the batters. That's called a balk. Okay, B-A-L-K. So at some of these we balked, and we wanted to find any other kind of way to get sober other than this. Okay, but we could not, with all the earnestness of our command, beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. And half measures avail us nothing. We stand at the turning point. Yeah, that's all I want to say about that, Brad. Keep going, please. Thank you.
Now we think you can take it. Here are the steps we took, which are suggested as your program of recovery. 1, admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives have become unmanageable.
All right, I want to point something out here about step 1. Okay, this is the first time that we've seen step 1 in the book. Okay, now, I often talk about like where do we find step 1 in the book, and we talk about it being in the chapter more about alcoholism. Okay, more about alcoholism on page 30. You'll see here it says we learned we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics. This is the first step in recovery. Okay, the first thing I needed to do was concede to my innermost self that I was truly alcoholic. But what does that really mean? I want to talk about this in step 1. I want to talk about the way that step 1 is written. Okay. because it doesn't say we admitted we were powerless over alcohol and that our lives had become unmanageable. And it doesn't say we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, comma, that our lives had become unmanageable. Bill uses a very distinctive piece of the English language here. He puts a dash in there, okay? We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, dash, that our lives had become unmanageable. And in the English language, that dash is almost like a period. It means end of first thought, beginning of an entirely new thought. And what that means is that my life is unmanageable when I'm drunk because I'm powerless over alcohol. But it also means that my life is unmanageable when I'm sober as well. And that is the distinguishing characteristic of Alcoholics Anonymous. We believe that alcoholism is a disease that continues on when I'm drinking, and more importantly, when I am not drinking. And that it is the pain of the disease of alcoholism when I am sober that will inevitably take me back to a drink. In fact, Bob D, one of my favorite speakers, says alcoholism is a disease that begins when I stop drinking. And that's kind of a head twist. Like, what are you talking about? It's a drinking problem, not a drinking problem. I do not have a drinking problem. I had a drinking solution to my unmanageability problem. I had a drinking solution to my restlessness, irritability, and discontent problem, okay? When we talk about being powerless over alcohol, we're talking about the physical allergy and the mental obsession, okay? That I can't stop myself from drinking once I've started, and I can't stop myself from starting again once I've sworn off, okay? I will always pick up the first drink, and I'm crippled with this physical allergy that ensures I will destroy myself in the process once I start, okay? That's the powerlessness over alcohol. When we talk about unmanageability, I thought for years that meant the stolen cars and the lost jobs and the broken relationships, all that stuff. No, the unmanageability that we're talking about in step one, singularly, is the way that I think and the way that I feel. And the way that I think, particularly the way that I think about how I feel, okay? Particularly me sitting around thinking about how I feel. That's a really dangerous combination, okay? And the way that I think and the way that I feel. Everyone on this call, I don't care how new you are to Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't care if you're here for one day. Everyone on this call that suffers from our disease knows that the way that I think and the way that I feel when I am sober leads me back to what? Taking a drink, man. That's it. That's the unmanageability, okay? And that dash, again, end of first thought, beginning of second thought, that means, and this is the hallmark of what's different about Alcoholics Anonymous versus just stop drinking plans, okay? That we believe that our disease continues on when I'm drinking and when I'm not drinking, and that dash is very, very important. And it means that my life is unmanageable, drinking and sober. If it was a comma, it would mean that my life is I'm powerless over alcohol, and therefore my life has become unmanageable. And if I stop drinking, my life will become manageable again. And we don't believe that in Alcoholics Anonymous. I believe, for me, in my own experience, when I stop drinking, I do not get better. I get worse. I get crazier. People used to say, Kevin, stop drinking, you'll feel better. And they were right. I feel depression much better when I'm sober. I felt anger much better when I was sober. They were right. I felt everything much better when I was sober, okay? That's what that step one means. That's what that dash means, okay? Back to you, Rob. Brad, sorry, what am I talking about? Rob, Brad, thank you.
2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care and direction of God as we understood him. 4, made a searching inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely willing that God remove all these defects of character.
Okay,
7,
guys, we're going to see one of the coolest. This is one of my favorite things, one of the things I wish they didn't change. Okay. In step 7, see if you can find out what the difference is here.
Humbly, on our knees, asked him to remove our shortcomings, holding nothing back.
Oh, I love it. Anyone who's sponsored by me knows, man. Every morning, every night, without fail, on my knees. That's how I pray, guys. I pray on my knees. That's what I learned how to do. I was taught to do that, and I love it, man. And I love that they had that in there. I wish they didn't change it.
8. Made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make complete amends to them all. 9. Made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10. Continued to take personal inventory and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our contact with God, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. 12. Having had a spiritual experience as the result of this course of action, we tried to carry this message to others, especially alcoholics, and to practice these principles in all our affairs.
So you'll see there, one of the things that they changed spiritual experience to spiritual awakening, right? So I get that a lot. What's the difference between a spiritual awakening and a spiritual experience? You know, I think that I'm the kind of guy that can get wrapped up in that type of a discussion for days and weeks and months. My problem in AA is not that I don't know things. My problem is that I don't do things. So I don't think it matters if I'm having an awakening or an experience or whatever it is. Just get busy. Just go find someone to help. Go work some steps. Go get a commitment at my home group and stop worrying about these types of questions. Okay. That's how that's what I really think. That's what changed my life. Okay. I don't have a lack of information problem. I have a lack of power problem. That's my problem. Okay. And once I get connected to that power, I don't need to ask, is it a spiritual awakening? Is it a spiritual experience? I don't know, but I'm having one. I tell you that. Okay. And I know it. And I have one, not because I know things, but because I do things today. And then you'll see here, it focuses in on our singleness of purpose in AA. Okay. Originally they wrote, carry this message to others, especially alcoholics. They took that out. We singularly carry this message to other alcoholics. That's our singleness of purpose in Alcoholics Anonymous. Okay. And we can talk about that more down the road. Brad, back to you.
You may exclaim, what an order, I can't go through with it. Do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. We are not saints. The point is that we are willing to grow along spiritual lines. The principles we have set down are guides to progress. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Our description of the alcoholic, the chapter to the agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after have been designed to sell you 3 pertinent ideas.
Hey, Brad, before we go into the 3 pertinent ideas, it feels like there's something that should be said about spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Do you want to say something about that?
Well, what I always like to say about it is I like to compare it to going on a diet. And when I go on a diet, if I'm to go on a diet, I will follow that diet to the letter, like absolutely without fail for a while, to a certain point, maybe for a number of weeks, right? And then I'll get invited out for dinner or something, right? And for the first while, I'll turn that down because I know I won't be able to stick to that diet. And then I'll eventually agree to go out to dinner with some friends. And I look for something on the menu that is as close to fitting my diet as I can. And I might do something I hate to do and ask them to change something on the diet and try to stick to it, but I will know I haven't stuck to it perfectly, right? And then, within a week, that'll happen again. And pretty soon, I'm not sticking to the diet anymore. And then I give up because I'm a perfectionist. And when I don't stick to something entirely 100%, then I feel like I failed and I stop and I just give up, right? And what I like is there's a number of places, including this one in this book, where it says, hey, we're not going to be perfect. We can't expect to be perfect. We're going to fail. We're going to fall short, but that's okay. Just pick yourself up again and carry on, right? And I like that it gives me a number of times, like, not just here, but a few times in this book where it tells me that I'm not going to be entirely perfect at this. And to expect perfection is going to, I'm going to be extremely disappointed in myself and I'm going to believe I'm a failure. And just because I fall down sometimes doesn't mean I'm a failure. That doesn't mean that that I should give up. It just means that maybe I made a mistake. I've fallen a little bit short, and I should learn from that and carry on. And that's the analogy I like to use with that.
I love that, Brad. Thank you. You know what? I needed to hear that. I needed to hear that tonight, man. That was great. That was really good, Brad.
Cool.
I can tell you guys, I've made every mistake that there is to make in Alcoholics Anonymous. I've made every mistake sober that I've made drunk. And I'll tell you what, man, it's tough. It's tough when you have to go make step 9 amends to people that you've harmed for things that you did in sobriety. Okay. But I've done that many times, many times. Okay. Because that's how we live. But we are not going to be perfect. I think that's a great thought. Like what my alcoholism will tell me, and the lie that my alcoholism will tell me when I fall short on something as well is like, well, Kevin, you're a failure, you're a loser, you know, you're terrible at AA, you're a bad AA, you're not valuable, you're not worthwhile, you know, why don't you just go kill yourself? Why don't you just go drink? Okay. That's what my alcoholism does, man. I go there and it doesn't take long. Okay. And that's, you know, it has to do with self-esteem, and it has to do with inflated ego problems, and it has to do, you know, fear and all that stuff. Okay. But that's how I am. And guys, I want to tell you, there's only 2 rules in AA. There's only 2 rules. I tell my sponsees this. There's only 2 rules. I can't drink, and I can't commit suicide. That's it. Those are the 2 rules in AA. Those are the only 2 things we don't have solutions for. We don't have solutions for those 2 problems. Okay. And I don't mean to get heavy about that, but I mean, that's a reality. Okay. If you go read the chapter 2 employers, the first 3 examples in the chapter 2 employers, all 3 of those guys take their own life. Okay. That's what happens around here sometimes with untreated alcoholism. So I don't mean to get heavy about that. I'm sorry, guys. But that's the reality. And, you know, we just don't have to take it that seriously. Okay. Anything other than those 2, everything's going to be fine. We will live and we will learn, and we will see how what we have done can be used to help someone else down the road. And it can be our greatest defects, our greatest pain, our greatest suffering, our greatest regrets, our greatest suffering can be transformed in God's hands into a tool to help others and to feel a life of happiness and usefulness, regardless of what we have done. So I love that, Brad. I love it. Okay, so let's talk about the 3 pertinent ideas.
Our description of the alcoholic, the chapter of the agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after have been designed to sell you 3 pertinent ideas. A, that you're alcoholic and cannot manage your own life.
So that's step 1. That's step 1. Okay.
B, that probably no human power can relieve your alcoholism.
That is also step 1. I can't tell you how many people, and I thought so too. I thought that A, B, and C were steps 1, 2, and 3. That is not the case. A is step 1. B is also step 1.
C, that God can and will.
Yeah. And how do I know that? Because the next line says being convinced. We were at step 3. Okay. Being convinced of what? Being convinced of those pertinent ideas, those 3 pertinent ideas, step 1 and step 2. And in particular, I want to talk about the second pertinent idea, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. This line is really about, I think it's about 3 people. 3 people in particular. It's about Carl Jung, Dr. Carl Jung, who tried to get Roland Hazard sober. Okay, Carl Jung was one of the greatest psychiatrists in the history of the world, could not get Roland Hazard sober. And thank God, no human power can relieve our alcoholism. Thank God that Carl Jung had the humility to say, Roland, I can't help you. You need to find a spiritual experience. Okay, I also think it's about Dr. Silkworth. Dr. Silkworth would have done anything to try and get Bill Wilson sober. Okay, but he knew that he could not apply the powers of good that lied outside his synthetic knowledge. And thank God he was humble enough that when Bill Wilson came to him and said, I think this thing has happened, he said, Bill, anything is better than the way you were. You keep after that. Okay. Carl Jung couldn't get him sober. Dr. Silkworth couldn't get him sober. And third, I think that this line is about Lois Wilson, Bill's wife, who loved him deeply and dearly and would have done anything to get Bill sober. Okay. No human power can relieve our alcoholism. And I think that's a big part of the reason why we tend to recommend for anyone in their first year of recovery not to get into a relationship, because man, you're going to get into it and it's going to feel like God for a little while. We all know how that goes. Okay. Or about the first like 3 weeks, everything's like, everything is all sunshine and sweetness and light. We all, the euphoric feeling, safe again in the arms of love. I knew when I saw her walking out of detox, she was the one. I know it. Okay, I know. And then the problem is, we all know what the problem is. Okay, two halves don't make a whole, man. Okay, and the rocks in my head fit the holes in hers, and man, it gets crazy, and it gets painful, and it gets painful real quick. And suddenly we're getting mad at each other because the way that I felt about a week ago, why aren't you making me feel that way anymore? Okay. And now that I'm manageability, the way that I'm thinking, the way that I'm feeling is coming back, and you're not fixing it anymore. Now I hate you. I hate you for not fixing me anymore. But they never signed up to fix me in the first place, nor do they have the power to fix me. Okay. So I think that second line is really important. And when I have sponsees that want to talk to me about getting into a relationship, I like to talk to them about this. No human power, okay, no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. And I like to talk to them a little bit about that. Okay. So now, being convinced, we're at step 3 right now. We're at step 3, rock and roll.
Being convinced, we were at step 3, which is that we decided to turn our will and our life over to God as we understood him. Just what do we mean by that, and just what do we do? The first requirement is that we be convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. On that basis, we are almost always in collision with something or somebody, even though our motives are good. Most people try to live by self-propulsion. Each person is like an actor who wants to run the whole show. Is forever trying to arrange the lights, the ballet, the scenery, and the rest of the players in his own way. If his arrangements would only stay put, if only people would do as he wished, the show would be great. Everybody, including himself, would be pleased. Life would be wonderful. In trying to make these arrangements, our actor may sometimes be quite virtuous. He may be kind, considerate, patient, generous, even modest and self-sacrificing. On the other hand, he may be mean, egotistical, selfish, and dishonest. But as with most humans, he is more likely to have varied traits. What usually happens? The show doesn't come off very well. He begins to think life doesn't treat him right. He decides to exert himself more. He becomes, on the next occasion, still more demanding or gracious, as the case may be. Still, the play does not suit him. Admitting he may be somewhat at fault, he is sure that other people are more to blame. He becomes angry, indignant, self-pitying. What is his basic trouble? Is he not really a self-seeker even when trying to be kind? Is he not a victim of the delusion that he can wrest satisfaction and happiness out of this world if he only manages well? Is it not evident to all the rest of the players that these are the things he wants? And do not his actions make each of them wish to retaliate, snatching all they can get out of the show? Is he not, even in his best moments, a producer of confusion rather than harmony? Our actor is self-centered, egocentric, as people like to call it nowadays. He is like the retired businessman who lolls on the Florida sunshine in the winter, complaining of the sad state of the nation. The minister who sighs over the sins of the 20th century. Politicians and reformers who are sure all would be utopia if the rest of the world would only behave. The outlaw safecracker who thinks society has wronged him, and the alcoholic who has lost all and is locked up. Whatever our protestations, are not most of us concerned with ourselves, our resentments, or our self-pity? Selfishness.
Okay, guys, this next paragraph, starting with selfishness and self-centeredness, this is really a very, very key and pivotal paragraph in our book. So please, if you have highlighters, pens, highlight this paragraph in particular, and please write somewhere around here, step 4, column 4. Okay, now I don't want to confuse the issue. We are still in step 3, but we're going to touch back to page 62. When we get to step 4, column 4, we're going to come back here. And when we get to step 6 and 7, we're going to come back here. Okay, because we are going to get to the root of our trouble right now.
Selfishness, self-centeredness. That, we think, is the root of our troubles. Driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity, we step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. Sometimes they hurt us seemingly without provocation, but we invariably find at some time in the past we have made decisions based on self, which later placed us in a position to be hurt. So our
So
troubles we
I'll just say for the sake of just clarification, and guys, if you'll stick with me, we're probably going to go a couple minutes over tonight. We'll probably go to about 7:05, and then please don't drop off the call right away. Don't drop off at the end, because my favorite thing in the world is to go around the room and find out where everybody's from. It's my favorite thing in the whole world. So don't drop off the call. We're going to go a little bit over tonight, probably just about 5 minutes. Selfishness is the way that I behave. Self-centeredness is the way that I think. Okay. And what am I thinking about as a self-centered person? Thinking about myself. Okay. Now, we typically use the term self-centeredness to mean, oh, he's so self-centered, he's so egotistical, he's so vain, he thinks so well of himself, right? Not the case for this alcoholic. It was a profound understanding for me in terms of self-centeredness to understand that I am far more likely to sit around thinking about what a piece of garbage I am. I am far more likely to sit around thinking how much I hate myself, thinking about how I've destroyed all the lives of the people around me, how I am never good enough and I'm a failure, and on and on and on. In all of those situations, whether I am thinking well of myself or I am thinking terribly of myself, I am thinking only of myself. Okay? That is self-centeredness. Okay? And that creates selfish behavior. And that, according to what we just read, brothers and sisters, that is the root. That's the root of our problem. Okay? That's heavy duty, man. We're going to come back. We're going to focus on that, man. Tune in next week for the exciting conclusion of selfishness and self-centeredness. Okay, back to you, Brad.
So our troubles, we think, are basically of our own making. They arise out of ourselves, and the alcoholic is an extreme example of self-will run riot, though he usually doesn't think so. Above everything, we alcoholics must be rid of this selfishness. We must, or it kills us. God makes that possible, and there often seems no way of entirely getting rid of self without his aid. Many of us had moral and philosophical convictions galore, but we could not live up to them even though we would have liked to. Neither could we reduce our self-centeredness much by wishing or trying on our own power. We had to have God's help. This is the how and the why of it. First of all, we had to quit playing God. It didn't work. Next, we decided that hereafter in this drama of life, God was going to be our director. He is the principal, we are his agents. He is the Father, and we are his children. Most good ideas are simple, and this concept was the keystone of the new and triumphant arch through which we passed freedom.
All right, so this idea of playing God, I never understood it, right? It always kind of freaked me out because, like, what do you mean playing God? How am I playing God? Like, what does that mean? Like, am I one of those guys in the psych ward that I used to see that thought he was Jesus? Like, is that what you mean? Like, because they let me out of there. I don't want to go back. Okay. So what's this playing God stuff, man? Okay. And the way that we talk about God being a king, right? God is a king. I can certainly understand wanting to be the king. Okay. I can certainly understand when little King Kevin wants to come out and rule the world, and little King Kevin is displeased with the subjects of his kingdom, okay, and wants to behead all of you, okay? I certainly understand that. So I'm just saying for myself, the whole playing God thing, I never really understood, but wanting to be the boss of the universe and thinking that I know better about you, what you should be doing, and I'm going to be your boss and I'm going to be the king of everyone. Man, I'm an only child, okay? It ain't easy, okay? Literally, like I'm a recovered alcoholic, but I'm still a recovering only child, man. Believe me. Okay. Growing up as an only child, you become king of the universe. Believe me. Okay. So look, here's the other thing I want to say about it. It says he is the Father. And I always like to talk about this. Emmett Fox writes about our Father, the Our Father prayer. You know that prayer, Our Father who art in heaven? And he talks about how revolutionary those two words are. Okay. Our Father. Okay. And I understand some of you may have a resentment towards your biological father, but this is not your biological father. We're not talking about your biological father. We're talking about your celestial, supernatural, spiritual father. Okay. Mother, if you like, sure. Parent, great. Okay. But I just want to point out what Emmett Fox says, how that sets up this relationship and how revolutionary those two words were when Jesus first said them. Okay. And don't get tripped out on the Jesus thing, but he said some good stuff. I like to use it. Okay. I'm not a Christian, but I like to use it. Okay. Our Father, number one, sets up the relationship. This is not a dictator and a citizen, or a tyrant and a slave relationship. This is a father and a child relationship that we have with God. That's the relationship that we have. Okay. And how do parents typically feel about their children? Typically, how do parents feel about their children? Is it safe to say they love their children? Is it safe to say you could take that love and multiply it by infinity and not begin to understand how much God loves you and how much God loves me? Okay, so that's our Father. So the other thing is that if I have been given birth to, from a father, I am of whatever that thing is. So if I have a father, I'm genetically part of that father. You guys know what I'm saying? Okay. Yes. Nod your head if you understand. You're familiar with DNA and genetics and these types of, okay. Okay. So the point is, the father thing is like, I am part of and made of the same thing that God is. If he is the father, we are of that thing. Okay. And then the last thing is that if he's my father, he is surely your father. And when I call you guys brothers and sisters, that is probably a lot more true than we actually realize. If God really is, and he is, our father. Okay. So he is the father. We are his children. That's what we just read. So the other thing that he is our employer. And we're going to read that right now. And this is the part, this is what, as in terms of action, this is what I talk to my sponsees about right here. Okay. Brad, back to you.
When we sincerely took such a position, all sorts of remarkable things followed. We had a new employer. Being all powerful, he provided what we needed if we kept close to him and performed his work well.
Okay, so I want to point out, we have a new employer, capital E on employer. Anytime in metaphysical writing, when there's a capital on something like that, that means that he's talking about God. Our new employer is God. We have a new spiritual employer. He is all powerful. And this is an employment contract that I am signing with God. Okay? God will provide what I need, not what I want, not what I request, not what my greedy little King Kevin mind wants to, my little schemes and designs and plans. Okay? He will provide what I need. If, and this is my part of the bargain, he will provide what I need if, number one, I keep close to him, and two, I perform his work well. This is a contract. He will provide what I need if I keep close to him and perform his work well. What is God's work for me? God's work for me is the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. Okay? That is God's work for me. And the chapter working with others in this book is the job description. Okay? God's work for me is the 12 steps. That's what God's work for me is. And it says I have to keep close to him. There are two ways that I keep close to God. Surely through step 11, constant prayer and meditation. How am I going to have a relationship with someone if I'm not communicating with them? It's when I stopped talking about God in AA and I started talking to God in AA that my life changed. Talking to God like a friend, like a family member, like a parent, like a father, whatever. Just talking to God. Man, it lights me up inside. I can feel it. Okay? So surely we stay close to God that way. What is the other way that I stay close to God? And I'll give you a hint. I'm doing it right now with all of you.
Carry the message.
Amen, Deb. We got to stay connected with other alcoholics. That's how I stay close to God. I have not been closer to God today than I have been right now with you. If I would know God, I have to know his children, man. Okay? Addiction thrives in isolation, doesn't it? Isn't that why COVID-19 was so dangerous? Addiction dies. Recovery thrives in connection. And that's why I'm such a big believer in the home group, brothers and sisters. Raise your hand if you have a home group. If you don't, if your hand isn't raised, I don't care what the group is, get a home group, man. Get a home group. Raise your hand if you love your home group. I love my home group, man. I love my home group. I can't wait. I can't wait for tomorrow night. I haven't been at PPG for 2 weeks, man. That's too long. I couldn't even, last week is unprecedented. I was on an airplane home from Houston. I couldn't even log in virtually. That was not easy for me, man. That kind of broke my heart. But there were some guys, some of my sponsees were having the meeting after the meeting. Even at 11 p.m., I went to the restaurant. They stayed late just so I could come and like get that little bit anyway. God will provide what I need if I keep close to him and perform his work well. I stay close, perform his work well, 12 steps, keep close to him, talk to him, and stay close to you, brothers and sisters. That's how we stay close to God. So, Brad, let's finish reading, and then we're going to read the step 3 prayer.
Established on such a footing, we became less and less interested in ourselves, our little plans and designs. More and more, we became interested in seeing what we could contribute to life. As we felt new power flow in, as we enjoyed peace of mind, as we discovered we could face life successfully, as we became conscious of his presence, we began to lose our fear of today, tomorrow, and the hereafter. We were reborn. We were now step 3. Many of us said to our Maker as we understood him, God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. We thought well before taking the step, making sure we were ready, that we could at last abandon ourselves utterly to him. We found it very desirable to take this spiritual step with an understanding person, such as our wife, best friend, or spiritual advisor. But it's better to meet God alone than with one who might misunderstand. The wording was, of course, quite optional, so long as we expressed the idea, voicing it without reservation. This was only a beginning, though if honestly and humbly made, an effect, sometimes a very great one, was felt at once.
Okay, beautiful. So we're going to do this prayer together tonight, and then we'll be done. So I was taught this line, relieve me of the bondage of self that I may better do thy will. I was taught when I did my step 3 by the counselor in the treatment center that I was in, a great man named Barry L. He's no longer with us. And I wish I would have had a chance to tell him just how much he did for me. But he told me that the entire program of Alcoholics Anonymous can be summarized in that one phrase. And I want to give that to you. That's my gift to you tonight, what Barry gave to me. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. The entire program of Alcoholics Anonymous can be summarized in that one line. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Then I always like to point out that AA, this deal with God, it's an employment contract. It's not a something for nothing deal. Okay? So it says, take away my difficulties. Why? Because I'm such a swell guy? Because the universe should get up on tippy toes and make everything little kittens and rainbows for Kevin? Because I'm so cool? No, man. God, you do this for me. You take away my difficulties. I go to work for you. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them. And we get to have victories. My sponsor today points that out. I don't have to be ashamed of having victories in Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't have to be ashamed of the fact we can take big swings. We can do incredible things in AA. It's okay to have victories. And I promise you, if I stay here and I work this way of life, man, gold is going to start falling out of the sky. A limitless load of gold is going to start falling out of the sky. And I get to keep it all so long as I continue to mine it for the rest of my life and insist on giving it all away. Okay? We can have victories, but victory over those difficulties will bear witness to those I would help. God, you do this for me, I go to work for you. That's the deal. God, you do this for me, I go to work for you. That's how it works. I go to work for you, you do this for me. Okay? That's how it is. Okay? So, now at my home group, what we do at Primary Purpose Group, we all get down together in the back room, old school AA. We all get down together. It says we should take this step with an understand our wife, best friend, spiritual advisor, or our entire home group is how we think you can do it. And so we all go in the back. We all get down on our knees and we say the prayer together. Okay, and that's what I would like to do with you guys right now. Okay, we're going to do that. But I will also say what we do at my group is at our group. It says the wording was optional so long as we express the idea of voicing it without reservation. Anyone who is doing their step 3, we say that prayer together and then we have them say the prayer again, but we have them say it in their own words. Okay? In a way that makes their own surrender to God. And then we have a question that we ask out of tradition after that, after we're done. And I'm going to ask Brad, I'll ask you the question tonight, okay? So everyone can see how we do it at PPG, okay? So guys, let's I'm getting down on my knees. If you can, if not, that's okay too. But let's do it. Okay, page 63. Many of us said to our Maker as we understood him, God, I offer myself to thee to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help. Thy power, thy love, thy way of life. May I do thy will today. Amen. All right. I always say today, one of my first sponsors told me that. It's like, I don't know about doing God's will always, but I can do it today. All right. And so we say that prayer, then we would have one of our new folks say that prayer again in their own words in simple language that makes sense to them. And then we have a tradition. We always ask this question, Brad, who do you work for now?
I work for God.
Amen. That's it. And then we all applaud and give high fives and hugs and eat cookies and drink coffee and love life, man.